I'm trying to make this slide advance. There we go. All right, so today is September 27th, and on the call today, we have a few people, but let me kind of cover the agenda very quickly. We're going to go over some of the Finish Line Grants program. And you know what? Let me stop just a minute. This is going to be recorded for you so that you can actually come back to this and review it with any staff that you need to. So let me start the recording. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. It looks like somebody already is recording. Is that right? Yes, it is. Okay, good. All right, let me continue. I'm sorry. All right, so today we're going to cover some of Finish Line Grants, the links that you can find, some quick references that we have, how we're going to kind of walk through from the application to the reporting, and then we'll cover some of the questions that we received from the September 8th webinar, but also we received a bunch of questions from email input as well. So we're going to go through those, and we'll come back and conclude with some of the next steps that we have going. Today, we have Brandy Massey on the line with me, business assistant analyst and college financial aid and student billing. I'm still getting used to all these titles. We also have Brenda Burgess, who's our associate director of student aid here at the system office. I am the Finish Line Grants coordinator. I come to you from the Department of Commerce, having worked with the program for the last couple of years. I do know several of the names that came across as points of contact. So welcome back to Finish Line Grants. You're going to be excited about the changes. We have a lot of good things that came out of this move, and it puts us closer to you. So that is a great resource for us to have you and what you need at our fingertips and us quickly accessible for your questions and answers. For quick references, I'm new to the system. I've worked in a private college, and I've also worked in a public North Carolina college, but this is my first time in the community college system. So I'm getting used to some of your processes. So bear with me if I don't know the answers. We have exceptional team members that can provide their expertise, and we will direct you to those individuals. I am more your resource guide for what Finish Line Grants can and cannot do. So on this slide in particular, we'll cover the Gear Fund a little bit, but mostly in that link at the top of the screen, you will find all of the documentation behind the move of the Finish Line Grants program from Commerce to the North Carolina College Community System. We just recently received some new documentation, so if you haven't seen it, it has been uploaded and you'll be able to visit that later. We shortly refer to Finish Line Grants as FLG. And of course, many of you already know cost of attendance, which is the maximum. Somebody asked me yesterday, what is the cost of attendance? It varies from college to college, not much in North Carolina, but it does. So that maximum is determined by your college. They threw a new word at me the other day, EFA, Estimated Financial Assistance. But more than anything else, I want to cover the last part of this slide because it is pertinent to who qualifies for eligibility for the Finish Line Grants program. It was specified in the governor's announcement on the press release that's linked on our page that this is for post-secondary students enrolled in post-secondary diploma and certification programs. We will come back to that. That is not to say we will not look at some of these other possibilities down the road. Right now, we are working with the program as it's been handed to us. And if you have questions or concerns or input on how we might include those, by all means, please send it our way. But we will have to review that and send it up the chain to make sure if any changes are approved, they are done properly from the inception of the program down to its delivery. Our new page, like I said, it has a lot more links for you to go back and read a little bit of the history of it. The third one, the Finish Line Grants Guide and Q&A, as of October 1st, will answer most of your questions. It goes into how the students qualify, how they apply, but I am always available for you to email me or call me on Teams, and let's see if we can get your question answered quickly. I know as we get used to it in the new program house, it's going to be smoother as we move forward. But we have some changes from the original Finish Line grants that are going to streamline the process. So I am very much trying to separate what we have done to what we are doing now. For instance, now the applications, they'll come in, and let me be very clear. If you have a process in place on how your students come and enroll or apply for this grant, you don't need to change that. A lot of what we are saying as far as how a student comes in and gets assistance is still up to the community colleges. We do have questions that they must qualify to be eligible, and then you'll be able to proceed with the college vetting. Often that's in a financial aid office, but sometimes that is in another office. And then, of course, when a student account gets paid or a vendor gets paid, that's handled by the business office. And the last slide here, these are reports that will be extracted by the system office and used to compare to one another for the financial side and the grant side so that we can reconcile the accounts monthly. So that is something that will happen every month, not every quarter. So please expect that if I have a question that something doesn't match or I'm missing because something is in flux, I might call you and ask you, can you tell me what this is? So that we don't have a month's worth snowballing into a whole quarter before we look at that. All right, so originally on the September 8th session, we had the previous 6 qualifiers, and they are listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it is now only 5. And I want to share another screen with you so you can, I want to isolate those so you can see them. So first and foremost, is there an immediate unforeseen financial hardship? If they do not have that, Finish Line grant is not the grant for them. That's just the long and short of it. We've moved that question to the forefront because having a student complete a long application about their name and what their school system is, their degree, where they are, their GPA, they don't need to answer all those questions if the first question doesn't apply. The second one is enrolled in post-secondary degree certification program. Third, 50% of that degree. That will come back around to that as far as dual enrolled as well as far as 2 majors. The GPA 2.0 or greater, that includes transfer students, will cover that. And cost of assistance not exceeded, excuse me. Okay, so looking at number 6 questions, the legal to work in the U.S. has been removed. We do not have to worry about citizenship for Finish Line grants. I got a question in the email today. No, we don't have to worry about that. So that is why we've gone from 1 to 5 instead of 1 to 6. So consolidated, that eligible types of aid, which a lot of you ask, can you please tell us more about number 6, has now become cost of assistance not exceeded, cost of attendance. I keep getting that wrong. So we will visit that one in just a couple of minutes. Post-secondary, I already highlighted that information for you. That is required for this grant now. It was before, but it's actually been explicitly aligned this time. All right, so here is our 5 questions, and this is kind of how we anticipate it flowing from the student to you. There are 5 questions. If any of those are no, if you look down the chart, it says if any are no to the first 5 questions, the applicant is ineligible for a Finish Line grant, so please seek other assistance. This is important because they are sitting in your community college where you have access to multiple resources. We don't ever want a student to feel like they've been set aside, pushed aside, or put on hold. They don't necessarily know that they're applying for a finish line grant unless you tell them. If somebody walks in and says, I have a flat tire, I got to buy another tire, what do I do? You could say, you know what, let's sit down. What can we do to help you? And because they just stated an unanticipated financial hardship, an unanticipated emergency, you can turn and reach for the finish line grant qualifiers and say, let's start here. Or if they come in and it has nothing to do with an emergency, you can forego even mentioning the finish line grant. Here's the real good plus. You don't have to track a denial. If they qualify, continue. If they do not, don't. All right, so then if all of them, are yes, it moves to college vetting, wherever that is. If it's in your foundation office, your single stop, anywhere that it is, they will verify that the emergency qualifies for help. We'll talk through that in a minute. Verify their school status and their cost of attendance eligibility. If they receive finish line grant funding, it cannot exceed how much they've already received above and beyond cost of attendance. All right, so let's go to a couple of these questions. They're interspersed within the presentation because sometimes we need to come back and revisit some of the statements we've already made. So the first question is, what happens to your prior FLG allocation? I'm going to put my Division of Workforce Solution hats on. That is a different pot of money entirely. So any money that you have had prior to October 1st of this year is a different funding source, a different reporting requirement, and should not be considered the same grant money. And if you were participating in it before and you are not now, yes, you are absolutely eligible to participate again. Every community college in North Carolina is eligible right now and can start the program as soon as they receive the funding allocation letter in their business office. Somebody asked about the administrative cost allowances before you make a POC decision. Points of contacts can change randomly. If you have somebody that you need to add, somebody you need to change, just send me an email and we will get that updated and we'll get the distribution list updated. A lot of decisions might be made after today's meeting because now you know who that might fall to, but it was not necessary for October 1st that you know all of the information ahead of time. You might have more than one. Somebody asked, can we have someone in Con Ed and some in curriculum? We do actually have several colleges that have multiple contacts, some 3 and 4, and that is their choice. It's just a distribution list. We're happy to share that. The real purpose of the point of contacts is so I can reach out to someone and ask a question about any particular grant that's awarded. And if that may mean I ask one person and they say you need to talk to the other one and we'll work through that. That's just fine. We want to make sure you're comfortable with who is handling this grant for you. Will there be operational funds? Currently, we are looking at possible administrative funding. At this point, we had a group meeting with the powers that be, I guess you would say, at the community college office. We need to get a track record behind us and get this system, this new program rolling. So we will be looking at that and revisiting this question through the last quarter of the year in determining how we can help best with the administrative funding if we have the funding available that's needed. What if we already have FLG money budgeted on a staff position? If you do not have that covered in your current budget, please reach out to us and we will put that question forth to the advisory committee and see what resources are available or what direction other colleges might be taking to solve that problem. But you'll have my email address here in a few minutes, so please send those my way if you have questions. If you've already awarded your students, some of your students this year, will you need to move everything over to the new codes? I'm not sure I really know the answer to that question, so I'm just going to read the answer. It came from someone else. Beginning with October 1st, community colleges will use the new workflow. So students will be actually entered into colleague. And Brandy, if you're on the call and want to provide any information about moving them over or not, that would be helpful.
I was going to provide some of that information a little bit later in the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So that will be revisited here in a few minutes. All right, right now, some of you may have seen the spreadsheet, and what it says doesn't matter. I just put it here kind of as a reference for me. Before, when we were with the Department of Commerce, every community college had a spreadsheet where they tracked their students who were approved or denied for funding, or even asked for funding. So you will get the historical data from July 1st until September 30th for your community college. If you want to use this spreadsheet to track, that's fine. It doesn't have to be submitted to me. It's a tool, but you will have the students that have already received it. So you will know how much toward the $1,000 requirement. Now keep in mind, this starts this July 1st. If you are going by quarter and now you're starting a semester in September, you would look at the semester students starting in September, not in July. Some of our colleges actually awarded FLG in the summertime as well. So this was aligned to the fiscal year, and you can look at it and say, okay, based on our school start date, do these students start at zero again toward that $1,000 maximum, or have they already used some of those funding? I will get those out to you probably the first week in October, because we actually are still wrapping up the program on the DWS side. All right, so that number 6 that many of you asked about, the eligible types of aid, that has actually become cost of assistance not exceeded. So it's really now number 5. I'm going to show it here as number 6 because it's ingrained in your mind that way. So yes, there are other forms of funding that must be expended before awarding FLG funds. So if they have money in their student account, that should go toward anything that is needed before you start factoring in the cost of attendance with the FLG grant. If a student meets or exceeds the FLG amount of $1,000, obviously other means of assistance should be considered. But if they receive funding, it should fall below the cost of attendance by the time everything is totaled together. All right, so here you see we've gone from 6 to 5. That's pretty much the visual, because I'll use this particular graphic later so that you'll know. All right, what does it mean when you say financial offices will provide avenues of funding? As of yesterday, I believe it was, we actually had funding letters going out to your business offices. So the funds are distributed to the colleges through your financial aid budgets. And then the request for assistance, wherever it comes from campus to campus, they will still need to go through financial aid to track the grant to ensure the student doesn't exceed the cost of attendance. So this is kind of a catch-all for the 2 questions on the left. So if you have single stop, or if you have GTCC or Titan that's handling it at that one particular college, that is your intake or your application office, but they'll still need to go through the financial aid office. We will come back to your question, Joel, in just a few minutes about student having fund in their account first. If FLG is handled by another area, is it safe to say we need to have access to these screens in Kali? Financial aid is required for tracking the grant and ensuring the student doesn't exceed cost of assistance. Financial aid is the office that has access to those forms. So however you accept the applications from your students, it would have to eventually flow through financial aid so that they can enter that data on those screens. The application process is, of course, at the community college's discretion, and we have a template that you can use. It's optional, but it'll give you a place to start, and it's customizable in that you can add your own questions. It's a Word document. and you can add your college name and logo and other contact information. And it looks a little bit like this. This is the top of it, where a student would come in and put in their name, the date, their student ID, and information about the financial hardship. And then there's an attestation that the student says, basically, this is all true, and if I'm awarded any funds, they will get used as their intended purpose. The second half of the form, which I don't have, is all of the qualifiers that you will be able to check yes or no and move down through in order to move it through your system in order to ensure that they do qualify, completely eligible, and that the money can get to them or to the vendor. So that is a little bit different than that you can pay it directly to a student's account versus a vendor, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Will the financial aid office be responsible for collecting quotes or car repairs? The financial aid office does financial aid work. The students should arrange to have the quotes to whatever designated office on your campus that they should be submitted. The colleges, they'll need some sort of application and follow-up process. We're providing a blank, a template application for you to work with, but you may already have one. Are the students' income taxable? Are there 1098-T forms? This will be dependent on what the business office determines for each student. FLG assistant may result in that 1098-T, but your business office will be able to make the determination based on each student's situation and financial arrangement through the college. If the college utilizes credit cards to directly pay the vendors, what type of invoicing should be done, reconciliation, and so forth? The college offices already have these processes in place. So just to default to their practices, we're not asking you to change what you're doing. And the other question on this slide was to utilize the credit card payments to expedite the 3-day turnaround time. Is there an administrative cost allowance for credit card fees? I had to read into that question, and I hope I read it right. If there is a processing fee of $2, you have to spend $2 to use a credit card to make a payment online. If that's what is meant, yes, that would be included. You would add that to the total amount of the FLG grant, so you make sure it does not exceed the $1,000 and it does not exceed cost of attendance. Jason, I see your question. We'll come back to that in a couple. Eligibility for these students, we have already covered that as of just recently. This is for post-secondary community college students enrolled in post-secondary degree or certification program. We should be able to start the program on or about October 1st. The college business offices should get their allocations letters this week. I know that the 1st is on a Saturday, but we should be ready to go at your community college on Monday. Check with your business office and make sure they got their letter. As soon as they have it, you're good to go. Somebody asked if we could put the email address into the chat, and I have it on the screen here, but I'm happy to do that. This is actually the top one is the one that was given to you originally because I didn't have one yet. That one does forward to me, but I would respond to you from my own personal email. And I'm going to put that right here. Oops, maybe. And there is an underscore after my first initial with the letters TMP, which is why I don't have it on a live link in the presentation so that you could see that underscore is there. Will the college be expected to follow the student through graduation? We are working on several things to hopefully still tie into the Department of Commerce's purpose in knowing that we have a job seeker base, a workforce development base for the state. But as the college properly uses the codes and colleague, the system office will actually be able to track the student But if the local coding becomes a systemic problem, then we may have to do more because of legislative reports. The keynote is here is properly uses the FLG codes. So Brandy will get to that here shortly. It is critical that we do that so that we can do our tracking properly. And of course, we do want any of your offices to recommend that the students have other resources available, those links available for WIOA or NC Works. That is how you determine to deliver those is up to you, but it's important that the students know that we are a state that serves them as a whole. So it doesn't just stop when they graduate from college. The state is there for them for their duration. So please use those resources whenever possible. All right, so coding things. For those of you that were with Finish Line Grants before, there was this long list on the right, all these different things. And that's great. They all still exist. However, in order for Colleague to work as efficiently as it does, that has been consolidated down into 6 codes. Now, I'm going to cover a couple of them real quickly. Dependent care and child care. The Colleague code is F care, but anything medically related goes under medical. So I'm going to show you a different screen. Let me answer the last question. Somebody said, where do we put uniform, special equipment, licensure, and certification? That would all go under course materials. Did someone have a question? All right, so here is what it looks like now. So accommodations for disabilities, rather than being a single line item, would go under medical. Anything automotive is under transportation, course materials. As I said before, when you get to dependent and child care, it should not include medical expenses. Those get put under medical dependent. Housing. Housing is real important for you guys that are new. We do not make asset payments, so no mortgage payments are allowed, only rental payments. And as far as transportation, no car payments allowed, no taxes, things like that. And I'll get a little more in depth there in just a minute. However, under utilities, it includes firewood if it's a primary heat source. We have mountain folk and other people, I know because I lived in Boone, so this is a legitimate statement, that use heat as a resource, firewood as a resource to heat their home. So yes, firewood is included if a primary heat source. Also, internet is necessary for a lot of students to complete work, online work, classwork, but this does not include television. It does not include mobile or landline expenses, apps or gaming or any of those things. So if it is bundled, please split out the internet portion of the payment from the bundle to make sure it qualifies. All right, so the other one that comes up a lot is about tuition fees and books. So it's not the intent of Finish Line Grants to function as a scholarship. Really and truly, please, if anybody asks you for money for their tuition, there's got to be a story that we can back it up with that would put it in a different light than as a scholarship. Fees and books, same thing. A lot of the Pell Grants and different things that they get, they cover all these expenses. So it's something else that requires tuition assistance. So please reach out to me and we will walk through it and make sure that the emergency qualifies. And if they need money for tuition because of for whatever reason they fall short, we may have to look at them and say, you have a legitimate emergency. We cannot help you with your tuition. However, is there another bill that we can help you pay that does fall in our types of assistance so that you can divert those funds to tuition? And I hope that makes sense. We try to make that very clear. When in doubt, please give us a call. All right, so not permitted for FLG assistance. This is the big one. No asset payments. That means laptops, cell phones, mortgages, car payments, etc. None of those things are qualified for FLG assistance. You might have another grant that does, and that's great, but not for this. Tax payments. Let me give you a specified scenario here. Somebody comes in and says, I just got a car and I haven't had a car and I needed a car and I got a car, but I have to get it inspected. Great. It's an unexpected financial need, okay? We can help with the inspection. We can help with the tags, but we can't help with the middle step, taxes. The state is not in the habit of paying its own taxes to itself. So just look at it that way. It might help you remember that. Court fees, no matter if it's guardian ad litem or anything else, court fees are not paid by Finish Line grants. We might be able to assist another way if it is an unexpected hardship. We may be able to help with another bill so that they can make that court fee. But when in doubt, please call me. Penalties and late fees? Absolutely not. Past due amounts? Absolutely not. These students should be coming to get help before they get in the weeds. That does not mean they know to do that. So please think around the grant and how it can best benefit them so that they don't try to pay things that do not qualify and could result in us saying no after they are anticipating. Any recurring or revolving payments. We do not pay for credit card payments, things like that. So that's how I took that statement. And I'm going to answer this question right away. How about a leased vehicle, or if a student is living in a vehicle? That is considered an asset payment. I am sorry. We've actually had that asked before for a student that was living in their car and it was their home, and it is unfortunate. But we have to really work as a community to help them find other resources to help. Finish Line grant is not the one for this. What is the benefit of knowing exactly what type of emergency the funds are going to, and how will that information be used by the powers that be? I had to kind of chuckle at this one because really and truly, I was really excited to join Finish Line grants because of the purpose and the quick turnaround time that it offered. Because if it's truly an emergency, these students are grappling with what comes next. And knowing that we're here to assist the students, it also helps us to know what kind of emergencies they're experiencing so that if we are overlooking a need in the state, that we can actually address that for them eventually. It's important because we monitor this money that the governor set aside is to help monitor the overall health and the direction of the state. So its programs like Finish Line Grant is one of those things that we use to help gather that information and feed it back. Also, further better concerning the life needs of students, understanding will help us identify other solutions and fundings, which is kind of what I just said. So I'm going to answer a question on the board right now. If the utility bill and they have a reconnect fee, we should only pay the bill and not the fee. Just making sure is your question. Well, if they're being disconnected, then at this point it's past due. So look for another bill where you can assist so they can pay their bill that is past due. Correct? We do not pay the fee. What about a recurring internet hotspot bill? If it's through a telephone or an app, the answer is no. Internet is covered, but again, go back to, is this an emergency? What is the catalyst that makes them all of a sudden not be able to pay their bill? All right, you're looking for a key. This is not a recurring situation. This is not a habitual situation. This is immediate. What just happened? And somebody asked, should rent only be paid? Current rent you can assist with current rent if there is an unforeseen financial. You're going to get so tired of me saying this, but it's true. So always weigh that first question, and it might answer the next question. But rent is one of those things that you can help if there's an emergency. All right, the recommended practices that we have online. This is an exceptional document because it captured what was going on across the state for Finish Line grants, which meant workforce development boards and community colleges all had their processes to administer this grant. It is not for use for us as far as anything that has to do with how it was done before. This document has a great deal of good information about how you might want to handle things. If you haven't read through it, please do. You might be able to glean certain information that will make your process smoother. Oh, I see the rest of your question. Tracy, should rent only be paid? Let me come back to these questions here shortly. All right. WIOA is not required anymore. For those of you who remember, NC Works was involved putting in a WIOA applications, and all the requirements for that application was part of Finish Line Grants, as was coding it into NC Works with the CSS code. None of that is required starting October 1st. Can the FLG funds be used to pay for testing fees? Yes, we've covered these types of fees in the past, but it's not a blanket yes. So again, if a student is enrolling in a program that's going to have testing at the end of that program, I'm fairly sure that they know those are coming. Those test fees are coming. So at the time that the test is presented, or the time to register for the test, if they have an emergency that they weren't expecting and that test needs to be ordered right away, then you can look to Finish Line Grants as possibly being a resource. We had a student not too long ago who quit their job. They said it was too much to do both. So I need money. Well, that was a decision, not an emergency. The recommended practices link is on the webpage. If you can pull it there, if I remember, I'll add it to you here in just a little bit. Can the funds be used to, didn't we just do this one? Oh, sorry. Okay. So there'll be guidance. Will there be guidance given to the business offices? I reached out to Brandy, who works on the colleague side, and she helped with this answer. Your business offices should know how to do all of this, but she suggested that I put this service portal link in here. If you have any questions, please use the service portal for them with regards to how to process. All right, so we're going to come back to these qualifiers verification real quick. Well, actually, I think we're pretty much covered that. I'm going to stop there for just a minute and see if we can answer a couple of these questions before we go on to you, Brandy, because I want to give you plenty of time. What's the process if a college runs out of FLG funds? The colleges were given an initial amount to begin with, and they're getting additional fundings based on their full-time enrollment. If you need more funding than that, please reach out to my office and we will put a request forward. If some colleges are not using their money, they have other resources, and FLG is not being utilized as much, they may, excuse me, they may release some of those funds back. But until we know what the need is beyond what's already been allocated, I won't be able to answer. Just please ask. All right, so at this point, I think we can look forward to having Brandy speak with us about her side of the, well, here's the link. Look at that. So, but I'm going to put Brandy on the line now and let her take over.
Thank you, Allison. Before we move to the colleague portion, I think we have two questions in the chat box that I don't, maybe you addressed them, but I want to make sure. The first one was Joey's question. Would you please explain if a student has funds in their account first, what that means? Did we address
All right,
that?
I'd like to, I did want to come back to that. Thank you. And I'd like to get Brenda Burgess in on this one. That may be one I have to come back and get a specific answer because I am new to the system. As I understood it, we were supposed to exhaust student funds before we allocated any new funds. So Brenda, can you shed any light on that, or do you know?
I'm sorry. Joey's question is, would you please explain if a student has funds in their account first? If Joey can unmute and just give us an example of what he's actually referring to, unless he is.
And I think Jason Johnson below that comment has given sort of an example
Okay.
about.
Well, it was from a previous slide that we were actually reading at the time where it says the students should exhaust their funds in their account before getting any more finish line grant. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what that exactly means.
Allison, I think we should come back to that question and provide a response to the group on that.
All right, I think that's a really good idea, Brenda. And yesterday I sent out a reminder to all the points of contacts via email. If you did not get a reminder yesterday, you are not on my distribution list. So if you need to be, will you please make sure I have that information today? That's one of the things. Joel and Jason, I assume you both are on that list, but I didn't recognize either name. So make sure that I get an email that says you'd like to be added to the point of contact list. Otherwise, we will make sure that these questions gets answered back to your points of contact. Did you see any more, Brandy?
No, I think those were the only two I saw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started to talk about the colleague portion. The very first thing I want to talk about is the documentation and the workflow for how you incorporate everything that Allison has said earlier into the workflow in colleague. So the very first thing we want to look at is your colleague scholarship guide. This is version 2.4 and it was published in August of 2022. You can find this information on the service portal, so ServiceNow. Most of you hopefully are familiar with this portal that we use. This is the portal we use to put all of our information for workflows for colleague out there. Not just myself and Andrea for the financial aid BSAs, but also for the curriculum, your Con Ed, lots of all the BSAs, all of those areas. This is the location that we put all of our information. So one thing I want to remind everyone is if you do not stay active in this portal and you let your login lapse within 90 days, it's going to make you inactive and you're not going to be able to log in and get information. So it's really important that you stay logged into this portal and that you're accessing this information pretty frequently. You can also subscribe to the different documents, maybe the College Scholarship Guide, also some other guides in different areas. And anytime we update it or a new version is uploaded, it will send you an email letting you know that has been updated. The second area I want to talk about is the patch information. Allison, if you could go back for just a second, is the patch that was delivered with the award categories, and we're going to talk about those. You heard Allison mention them a few minutes ago. In her slides, I think it said colleague code in the column. These are actually award categories, and we've delivered everything that you need. So if your system administrator has loaded this patch, you should be able to access this information in colleague. And I'll talk about in just a minute how we're going to use this, but it's really important to have that communication with your SA to make sure that patch has been loaded before you start trying to award this finish line money and to administer this grant. Okay. So let's talk about sort of what was delivered. And this slide shows award codes and categories. I'm not going to talk about the red boxed area just yet. I want to talk about the right-hand side. So you're going to see these associated categories. There are 6 of them. You'll see they're the same ones at the top box as they are in the bottom. These are the only categories that you can use for finish line funding. Now, many of you are going to say, okay, well, what do we do with these categories? And I'm going to show you how to set that up in just a second, but I want to talk to you about the left-hand side and that red area that I have highlighted with that red box. So you may not like the naming convention that I came up with, and that's okay. You can change it. The area to the left of the screen, you can customize however you want to at your campus, whatever makes sense for you. Those are your award codes. And we're going to set those up on a screen called AWD, and we'll look at that in just a second. But you'll also notice that I've highlighted an area of curriculum, and then I have separated those out into Con Ed as well. We have to separate out our award codes between curriculum and Con Ed for the business office because, Con Ed and curriculum students are on different terms. So we have to separate those out for payment and processing. So you will have to have 6 codes for curriculum and 6 codes for Con Ed. Now, they will not each have, I'm sorry, Allison, go back. I'll let you know when to go forward. You'll notice in this slide that these categories on the right-hand side are the same as they are at the bottom. We have different award codes for curriculum and Con Ed, but we will still use the same categories. So if you choose to make different award codes and you choose not to use that naming convention like I have there of FCARE or FCOA, and you choose to go a different way, just make sure that you use the right associated category, because it's going to make a big difference when we do reporting, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. You can go to the next slide now. So this screen is just really a detail of those 6 categories that I talked about a few minutes ago. If you want to check in your system to see if this patch has been loaded from your system administrator, you would go to a form called ACD. This is your award category definition, and you could look up any of those 6 items in that bulleted area there. If you find them in the system and your screen looks like what you see in this PowerPoint, that means they've loaded the patch. If you come to ACD and you do not see them there, that means they have not loaded it. So you need to send an email to say, I need this information loaded ASAP so I can start administering the Finish Line grant. Okay, you can go to the next screen. So let's talk about AWD. I want to talk about the very first box, the destination to start with. And this is the area, for those of you that are not familiar with financial aid, this is where we set up award codes. And award definition is what the screen is called. So anytime we have a new award, we set up a new award code. It allows us to create this award so we can apply this on the student's account. One thing that's really important here is the destination, the first box that I have highlighted in red. You will notice that I have a comment that says colleges may have to use cash payment if payment is not applying to the student account. So you have the option with this Finish Line funding that you can actually disperse this money on the student's account. Maybe it was for tuition and fees. Maybe it was for something else. You can actually disperse it on their account. And if that's what you choose to do for your workflow at your campus, then you would use Destination 1. If this money is going to be paid, for example, to a car repair business for car repairs or a utility bill, and you've decided we're going to send this money out directly to that business, we're not giving it to the student, and we're going to use the voucher process in the business office, then you would want to do your destination as a 2, which is cash payment. So it makes a difference. So here's what I would do if I was at a campus right now. I would say I would get that list of those award codes I had in an earlier slide, and I would take that to your business office and say, these are the 6 for curriculum and 6 for Con Ed, and you tell me how we're going to administer this funding. Are we going to run it through and put it on the student's account, which is using the FATR report? Or are we going to voucher this out directly to the companies and we're not going to run it through the student's account? That will help you determine how you need to set up this funding. Okay. So the second area I have highlighted in red, you'll see the category. That's what we've delivered to you in that patch. That was the area that I showed you earlier on the right-hand side that showed exactly what you needed to use for each different type of award code. That is one of the most important parts of this, because this is what we're going to pull back for reporting so we can monitor how much you've given for childcare, how much you've given for tuition fees, medical, transportation, and so forth. So you have to make sure those categories are correct. We're going to pull information back. We already pull information at your campuses every night through a financial aid data extraction. It comes back to the system office for us to retrieve this award data. So if you make sure those categories are correct, then it'll allow us to extract that information, and we can actually help do the reporting for you, and it'll save so much time for you in the future. Okay. The area in the bottom where it says GL and AR type information needs to be obtained from the business office. This information only needs to be populated if you choose to use destination 1, which means you're going to apply this money to the student's account. If you set these up as cash payment, it does not need to be populated. Okay. Go to the next slide. So once you set up your award codes and you've set up all those categories, the next item that you want to do is FLTT. This is our file translation table. We use this anytime we have a new award code that we have created for awarding purposes. You have to populate which item correlates for the in-shed reporting and for the financial aid data extraction. So you'll notice here in the box I have highlighted in red, lines 47 through 50. Those are all the award codes that I have set up. If your naming conventions were different and you chose to go a different route other than what I created as an example, then that's what you need to put there. But all of the area that says new code will be 102 for all of them. So make sure that you enter all of your award codes. Now let's talk about entering the award for the student. It's really important, and my screenshot's a little bit small, so I apologize for that in the slide. But you'll notice in this screenshot that I've added F-Care. So this is child care that we're paying for a student, and it's $500 for the fall semester. It's really important that you only enter the amount that you have paid out to the student. So some of you may say, okay, I'm going to give everybody, or maybe this student, we're going to adjust, and they gave us a bill, or they told us it was going to cost $300 to get their car fixed or for their utility bill. So if it was going to cost that much and you put $300, but then you later got an invoice or you saw that was actually $275, we don't need to leave $300 here. We need to put the $275. It is what you truly have given the student. That's the amounts that should go on AIDE. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So my area is sort of brief and to the point. Again, I'm going to reference you back to the Colleague Scholarship Guide. And if you need assistance, once you get started in this process, you can put in a ticket at the service portal. There's the email address there. And my team, myself, Andrea Simpson, she's the other BSA for financial aid, and Frederica Poindexter, she is our developer, will be glad to assist. Now, I want to go back before we move on to a question that was asked a few minutes ago about what we do for those students that we have already awarded. So we're going to start this new workflow and coding these students on these new award codes and these new award categories beginning October 1st. If you have already awarded students on your other allocation, we are not going to modify those students. We're going to leave them like they are, and we're just going to move forward going with this new allocation. We're not going to backtrack and try to update any of that information. Okay. And this, I think, is the end of my section. So let me look at the chat box and see if we have questions.
I know that I saw the one Brenda's trying to get some clarity on Joel and Jason's. We'll get back with you on that. I also saw the one about the students who are non-US citizens. We will respond to that via email to the points of contact. There's a Jamie Dandridge one. CE students do not have a COA. So, Brenda, is that something you can help with, or is that one we need to get back with as well? We're really close to time to wrap up, so we can add that to the list.
Yes, I would prefer we provide a uniform response on that, a response that can be shared with all of the points of contact.
All right, in that case, we do want to keep us, if we're mindful of your time, we do want to keep you all in the loop. Oops, sorry. So let me go ahead and copy my email in here. If you have put your email into the list, into the chat box, please send it to me directly rather than me having to pull it from here. I'll save you to my system as well, so that way we are connected further. So I'll put it back in the chat for you. But yeah, just let me know you're the POC for your college. And then we will pull the questions out of this chat window and compile another list of FAQs for you. I don't have anything else to add for today, except that we will be working with the points of contact in the months of November and December. All of us will have the opportunity to meet as the Finish Line Grant Coordinator and your college to establish a rapport and to move forward. So I'll be able to answer some of your questions individually in those meetings. So watch for them. Watch for an invitation from me probably early part of next week, either sometime in October or November. Thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking this time. This program is exceptional. It has its place in that it's helping students that are in a tight spot that was totally unexpected. It's another resource for you to share resources available at your college, available to the students. So we look forward to having it soar in its new position. And I'm here for questions if you have anything. Just reach out. Thanks so much.